I was thinking we can dive a little bit into just the who's running our country question. I know
Uh-huh.
this, I don't want to get too political. We're more of a geopolitics podcast, but
Yeah.
after that debate and just seeing the gaslighting from a lot of the Twitter space, the Democratic Party Twitter saying that, Biden still got it. I saw a Newsweek article that said independent voters are still are flocking to Biden now. It was just kind of
Yeah.
it's strange. It's like the doubling down
Yeah.
on this thing, but then it just
Well,
anybody
but
that's
yeah, a lot of the establishment is not supporting him. They really have turned on him. No question about it. The New York Times, editorial said time to go. And
right.
that's
Well, I don't know if they can let him go because it sounds like the Biden's family, Jill Biden and Hunter
right.
Biden, are really, which just seems like that's not what you should do with your husband and your father. It seems pretty
Right.
wrong.
Right.
But they're just wanting to save their own skin, maybe. But anyways, we won't dive too much into personal attacks on the Bidens. But just the bigger question on tying it into geopolitics is who is running America now? It doesn't seem to be Biden. Like, is America even capable of negotiating with somebody like Putin if Biden is the president?
Yeah. Well, I you know I guess you can't quite say that he's not running things, but obviously he's going to be much more removed. Much less involved in the details and day-to-day affairs than the average president. I mean, some presidents tend to be more hands-on. Other presidents tend to delegate more authority, and both approaches can be successful, right? I mean, it's. I mean,
Well, I would say in the situation we're in now, a hands-off approach is not what we want. We need somebody that's willing to talk with world leaders, right? I mean,
right.
do you think a hands-off approach is acceptable in this situation?
No, obviously we should have a vigorous, engaged, knowledgeable, president. There are a lot of crises, yes, and that's not, yeah, obviously that's not the kind of president that we have right now. Yeah, so what we have is we have a foreign policy that is being run pretty much by the State Department, by I think Anthony Blinken in particular. And I think, to be honest, though, that his thinking is pretty much in line with Joe Biden's thinking. It's not that he was chosen because they were of one mind. And so I don't think there's really much of a divergence. If Joe wakes up one day and gains a mind that's 20 years younger or something, I don't know that we would see a big change in policy, to be honest. I think that the people that he has in charge do reflect his thinking, all in all. But yeah, there's really nobody there captaining the ship. We have different policies that are on autopilot. So, I guess one thing is just the chance that there's going to be any real reassessment. I don't think it was great to begin with, but it's probably even less likely that you have like the various agencies, institutions in charge. I mean, it's less likely that they're going to change their the course that they're on right now in any significant way. So long as they're autonomous. The institution will continue to be the institution and will continue to, pursue the policies they've always wanted to pursue. A president, has the authority and I think has a greater freedom to make adjustments, at least to policy, maybe to set a new course, and that we don't have somebody, obviously, who's really capable of doing that.
Right. I mean, can this peace negotiation succeed and proceed without Biden ever picking up the phone? Like, could we negotiate a peace deal with Putin without any communication
Right.
from the president? Is that
Well,
even
that is a
possible?
problem. That's a good point. Well, first of all, I don't think there's really a chance in any case. But Yeah, I mean, if it's just a further complication, it's a further obstacle to any kind of deal that you don't have a competent president, because I mean the Russians look over there and they say, who are we supposed to talk to? Do we make an independent deal with the State Department? But that doesn't have any particular authority. The the Secretary of State could be fired the next day, and it doesn't mean anything. That agreement that we made with them just doesn't mean anything, beyond his tenure. So, yeah, I think like even in the best case scenario, with a vigorous and alert and engaged Biden, the chances of a peace deal would be very slim. But I mean, without a president at all, there's really, again, you're the Russians. Who do you talk to?
Do you think the reason that Biden doesn't want to talk with Putin is, well, one, he hates Putin, but also do you think he's maybe a little bit afraid to talk to him? Do you think Biden is aware that he can't communicate and that's why he's kind of hidden from sight most of the time? Like, does he talk to world leaders at all?
Well, that's actually, I think actually, right. That's a good point. That reminds me of an incident that took place at the end of 2021, when Putin was reaching out, was, sounding the alarm and saying, hey, we need to talk. We're he's basically warning that a war was coming. And he did get Biden on the phone in December of 2021. And Biden actually agreed. This is according to Ray McGovern, the very high-ranking CIA analyst. Biden agreed not to place nuclear missiles in Ukraine. He said, okay, that's something we can agree we won't do. Roughly a month later, apparently, Anthony Blinken just walked that back and said, well, he didn't really mean that. We can't make that promise. And that, it's been said, may have contributed to the start of the SMO more than anything. It's like when they say, when the Russians realized, that we don't have any guarantees. We thought we had one. We thought Biden said so, right? But now they're telling us that no, his agreement didn't mean anything. We simply can't allow this possibility to exist. Missiles in Ukraine, just minutes from Moscow. And that may have been the spark, that put Ukraine on fire, set it ablaze.
Well, Anthony Blinken, he is a Democrat. He's supposed to be a very cultured person. He grew up in France. And how did the Democrats and people like Anthony Blinken become such, such hawkish, pro-war people? The Democrats were supposed to be an anti-war party.
Yeah.
How did that switch happen?
Right. Well, that's, it's a great mystery. It's true. There was a time when the Democrats were the anti-war party, right? The ones that favored diplomacy. And now we have a diplomat that seems to actually be opposed to diplomacy. He's about issuing ultimatums and threats of various kinds, right? I think it's, again, it's kind of that the Democrats. Well, one thing is, they've really been the establishment, certainly in the media, and for a long time. And they're the revolutionaries. Let's say there was a certain radical wing of the Democratic Party, that arose during the '60s, and it was very much anti-war. But it made its long march through the institutions, and then, it used to be an outside force within the Democratic Party. You could see that like at the 1968 convention. It was the radicals who were rioting in the streets. But eventually those radicals made it into the halls of power. And now, it's those radicals that run, that have their hands on the levers of power, that are the Democratic establishment. So I think part of it is like once you become the establishment, you tend to look at things differently. Well, now we're in control, and we control this military machine. Isn't it great? We can go punish our enemies. I mean, I think that's part of it. But then it's also a reflection of this, let's call it this hegemonic disease. When that unipolar moment was something that this knowledge that we were the sole superpower and that we could simply act as we pleased, that we could use our military power without fear of repercussion around the world. I think that was intoxicating, and it was intoxicating to Democrats as well as it was to Republicans, and it's just something that they haven't. That's the way they started to think. Basically we're the people in charge. We issue the orders, right? And it's just like those that oppose us. The way to deal with them is simply to punish them. And that's a mindset that developed, over time, but especially I think, like towards the end of the last century. And it's a mindset that these people just seem to be unable to escape from. I mean, it's just that even as the world has changed in fundamental ways, they no longer have that power. They cannot act without restraint because their rivals have risen. But it's just something that they refuse to see. They don't want to see, and they continue to act as if they still were living in the 1990s.
Is there any solution for this? This it just sounds like you're saying, this power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Yeah. And so when anybody gets elected into the halls of power, they're just going to start, taking advantage of these military machines and go after people. What's the solution? Is there, because we just have two war parties. It's like you could vote for war or more war. That's not
right.
That's not good.
We really don't have much of a choice here in the U.S. Some countries there may be a choice, there may be a possibility. We can, I guess, talk about it later of going down a different path, but it seems like there's just one path, that our elites are willing to tread at the present time, and it's this same hegemonic path, that's just going to insist on being the hegemon. It's just though the evidence that this policy is failing and is failing in spectacular fashion is just piling up before us, but still they don't want to see it. And part of the problem is that when you have this, maybe they've lost their power to actually do things in the real world, especially beyond America's borders. Witness what's happened in the Red Sea with the Houthis, witness what is happening in Ukraine. But they still have tremendous media power, both internationally, but also especially domestically. So, you can do things. You can, your policy can be just a total flop. Like so much of like I think the best example is the sanctions war against Russia, a total disaster. But you just haven't had the media like holding their feet to the fire. There should be a lot of questions. Hey, what's happening? Why isn't the ruble rubble, and so on and so forth. You have a very compliant media that was more than compliant. It's just it collaborates in maintaining certain fictions. So and covering up the failures of U.S. policy, and that allows them to continue down this course. I think the role of the media in all this just can't be overestimated. And then you have people, of course we have alternative media now, but most people don't make the effort to search it out, and they just kind of lazily pick up the stories that are fed to them, through Facebook or Google News or whatever. And all that is going to, reinforce the illusion in the sense that, basically we're still in charge, that, all our opponents are some combination of let's say, barbaric and stupid.
Do you think the media can be saved? Is there any salvation there? Or are these institutions, now that they've gone down this road of being just a propaganda arm of the government, can they admit it and cut back? And are they able to recover the reputations that they once held?
I don't see much of any hope for the mainstream media. I was thinking the last couple of days after the debate that you know, it was quite startling how quickly they turned on Biden and said, "Oh my God, this was a disaster. The guy is clearly senile, not fit for office." And you say, "Wow, it's like, the this alternative democracy, a vibrant democracy, and everyone there is a patriot who's." Who just wants America to send in some more weapons so they can go to the front and fight those evil Russians. Now, those of us who are in the alternative media, we see these videos every day. I mean, just every day they come out and of, people being tackled in the streets and being wrestled down, pulled out of bars and cafes and pulled off buses and to taken to these recruitment centers. And they're hard to watch because you really feel for those guys. I really find them hard to watch. And then often, like a wife or a mother or, the father is president, and they're doing what they can to try to save, their kid or their husband. And it's, but you have no recognition of this. It's so obvious that this is something that's going on. This is something, that should be a major news story. Occasionally it, trickles through, but it's just on the edges of the mainstream media. But just in general, the opinion leaders don't, act as it doesn't exist. So I was thinking, well, could we have a moment like we did with Biden where they say, "Oh my God, what's going on?" And, their eyes are opened. And I realized that no, because the case is, okay, I think the Biden panic happened because they realized that they couldn't achieve their objective with him. They started with, "Oh no, we're going to lose the election. And we're not going to defeat Trump." And that's something that we have to do. So we got to jettison this guy and find somebody else. So it's, it's a part of it. It's a means to an end. They thought that Biden could be a tool to achieve their objective. And when they realized that he couldn't serve that purpose, they all of a sudden started, well, we have the hysteria that we have now, right? But like in the case of Ukraine, they don't care. I mean, these guys going to the front, that's their objective. They want them to go to the front and fight. That's what they're there for. So I don't think we're ever going to have a moment like that. I think, it just seems like what I'm saying is just in general, they're committed to these various projects. That's what they're about. And their job in the whole thing is to maintain the narrative that supports the project. They made an adjustment to the Biden story when they realized that the project was in danger because of Biden. But otherwise, they wouldn't have done it. So I just don't see any hope in the mainstream media. I mean, the hope, of course, is the alternative media. And that's, it still doesn't have the numbers, but it's there, right? All of us are just chipping away. And eventually, it's clear, part of the recurrent hysteria, within the Western establishment is about disinformation and so forth. It's obviously something that worries them. The fact that there is this alternative media where you can hear stories that, haven't been approved, that don't support the official narratives. So that, that is something. I just don't know if it'll ever break through. We'll have to see.